We are in a period of high inflation and high energy costs. We're no longer manufacturing our own energy. What have I been telling you for years? A couple of years since this particular president did away with all that. If we're not in charge of our own water, borders, food supply, energy, we are ripe for the taking, and our enemies have finally realized that. We've been taken by the throat here. Also in a situation where we are not as united as an American people as we should be, and that's apparent by something new that has developed. There are a number of reasons out there why we're divided, but there is a new racism being ratcheted up that I would have never thought I would see against Nikki Haley from Whoopi Goldberg. There was another individual on MSNBC named Wajahat Ali who called her an alpha Karen with brown skin. Getting back to Goldberg, she used the same insult that numerous critics have called for CNN's anchor to lose his job, Don Lemon. And we'll go through all that today. Here is a 51-year-old woman who's had a very successful political career and wants to do better as president. She thinks she can do better than the status quo. Instead, women and minorities, and you know I don't like using that term anymore because we're all Americans, instead of rallying around her and, lauding her for her successes, she's being chopped apart for her ethnicity by those very people, the so-called minorities. Now, Don Lemon, he's going to return to work on Wednesday after formal training in the aftermath of his sexist, horrible, racist comments. And if you think anybody would be sensitive to comments like the comments he made, it would be a black gay man. But he's shown what a racist bigot with a KKK mentality he has of all his own. And unfortunately, he's in the business of spewing out the news, which is nothing more than, the world according to Lemon. And no doubt you've heard there is a cadre of female employees at CNN who identified themselves as liberal, progressive, centrist. They've given the network an ultimatum. They will leave if he is not fired. Don Lemon. They will leave. And apparently that line in the sand is going to be crossed tomorrow. Now, I realize the president spoke today. We're going to be talking about that. Hopefully we'll be listening to some of that speech. I'm going to have Michael chop some up and get it ready for us. Since his first day in office, the White House pledge from his administration is they were going to bring transparency and truth back to government, promising to realize that campaign promise, really plays at his aides. It's really driving the White House absolutely crazy. It's driving a wedge through the White House has taken two sides. And this is proven to be more complicated as the public is now clamoring for more answers from Biden, like military jets downing Chinese surveillance balloons. Why are 4 or 5 mysterious things still flying around? One has been seen over Hawaii as recently as yesterday. The nuclear threat directed at our face from Russia. The White House is having a major meltdown on how to cope with this open dishonesty of the President of the United States. Obama's former doctor, we talked about this last week, says the White House is going to sugarcoat the Biden physical. This is a doctor who also has attended to Biden in the past. There is so much more under the microscope now with this president. And there is a danger to us all that if things are not discussed openly, we may never survive this period. Now, getting to the latest threats of war, we'll get to that. Kevin McCarthy is offering Tucker Carlson, not that I'm a Tucker Carlson fan, I am not, access to the footage from the January the 6th riot. He's offered 41,000 hours of video footage documenting what happened on January the 6th, raising eyebrows at what some people have said were security concerns on that day. What does that mean? So McCarthy's handing over 41,000 hours of surveillance footage, and Carlson's crew is going to go through it, and he says, he being Kevin McCarthy, says the camera angles and all of the access from several angles on the Capitol grounds during the riot, there is some legitimate reason as to why this footage has remained secret. And by definition, this video is going to reveal it. Now, what are we expecting to see? I will share a little later. I want to thank Clint Olivier for hanging out on Friday. First, I was going to go out of town. Then I wasn't going to go out of town. Then I did go out of town. And at the last moment, I got the day off fully. I didn't even realize that Monday was a holiday. So it was a bonus. And I went up to a friend's cabin, did a little fishing, cleared my head. I really needed it. I want to thank Blake Taylor for making the arrangements to get out of here and clear my head after some of the problems I've had with moving. Hopefully, I'm still in the hotel. Hopefully, it's been over a month. When the kitchen is completed, and that may start tomorrow, yay! I probably will be able to move back into the house and finally get everything out of the garage and move into the house. I hope. We'll see. So anyway, you all know our friend Serge, a musician in Kyiv. I had a talk with him while Joe Biden was visiting Zelensky in that surprise trip. And it's interesting to note, even though we have Putin rattling the nuclear saber today, he tells me that Kyiv, or Kiev if you prefer, is now full of electricity, meaning they got all the power back. People have gone back to work. The stores are somewhat full again. What he worries about and what is worried about nationally is the medical aspect of society has fallen because of the constant attacks. And he's worried, as many are worried, about disease taking over in Ukraine. So we'll see. I credit the president for going there. I appreciate the fact that he's found more money to give to the Russians. I know there are some on my team politically that have said we've given too much money, the speaker being one. To me, you can't give enough money to fight old Soviet tyranny, having lived through that the first time during the Cold War in the 60s. Those were dangerous times. Speaking of that, what are the 3 most dangerous cities in California that you could live in? Can you name them? Do you know who they are? Are you worried about us being on that list of 3? I'll tell you right now, I'm not going to keep you waiting. We are not on that list, thanks to people like Jerry Dyer and Paco Balderrama. Sure, they're conservative. Fine. Sure, they lean to the right. Fine. That keeps you safe to enjoy whatever politics you want to enjoy, because this is America, a country that I will fight for even at my age. Somebody I've always admired in the Democratic Party in California is Ana Caballero. She is a farmer's friend. She is a state senator now whose district includes the city of Selma. She is calling for a full-time credit audit of the suspected cop killer. Well, he's not suspected, but I got to say that. Nathaniel Dixon. This is after the DA, Lisa Smitkamp, even yours truly, after getting the numbers and doing the math, have questioned the California Corrections Department of Rehabilitation of giving that suspect undeserved time credits that cut him loose early, that led to him killing that young cop who never was able to see his child born. Now, call Anna what you want. Oh, God forbid she's a centrist. She always seems to come through in these moments when we need a little brain power, a little rational brain power in the Democratic Party up in Sacramento, and I thank her for this. President Carter is in hospice, indicating his time is near. I send my sympathy, my prayers. Former city council person Cynthia Sterling, who I believe served the city from 2003 to about 2011. Her son was shot, killed, while visiting a hookah lounge at a party on Sunday. I don't think we know enough about this to make any comments, and I wouldn't want to. But here's another grieving mother who's lost a son. And I was just talking about how safe it is here in Fresno. Yeah, right. So here it is. Zelensky is warning of World War III if China allies with Putin. Putin has suspended the U.S. nuclear treaty, telling Russians that the West wants to finish us forever, which is complete crap, and we all know that. The EU has given China a huge warning, the biggest that they can give, that if China arms Russia, they're going to be crossing that red line. So let's get with the going today on KMJ and the subject matter at hand, which I never thought I was going to have to talk about, but that's where we will lead in times of what could lead to World War III. I mean, God protect us all. I hope I'm wrong, and I pray that I'm wrong. This is KMJ. You know, how much is just a bunch of bluster and how much of this is very real? The president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, announced that he's going to be suspending Russia's participation in the only agreement between itself and the United States that regulates the nuclear arsenals. So today, with his address in front of the country's parliament, he reiterated this long list of grievances that are just complete crap, and we know they are, for Russia being in Ukraine, including claims about neo-Nazis in the Ukrainian government and NATO aggression. He also announced Russia would be halting its participation in the New START treaty. Now, he was cautious about that announcement. He says, I have to say that Russia is suspending its participation in New START. I repeat, not withdrawing from the treaty, just merely suspending its participation. Now, the Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, called Putin's announcement a deeply unfortunate and irresponsible. I could come up with better words than that, sir. Adding that we'll be watching carefully to see what Russia actually does. He added that the U.S. is willing to start talks about a new treaty at any time with Russia, irrespective of anything else that goes on in the world. Barack Obama, Dmitry Medvedev, I always had trouble with his name, signed that treaty in 2010 to manage the nuclear arsenals. And the two sides agreed to extend it just days before its expiration a year ago in this month. Well, 2 years ago. For another this was going to be extended for another 5 years to 2026. Per the agreement, Moscow and Washington committed to a maximum of 1,550 strategic nuclear warheads on a deployed intercontinental ballistic missiles or deployed submarine-launched ballistic-type missiles, and a maximum of 700 deployed ICBMs. It's a long list, and SBLMs and heavy bombers, by the way, that's also on the list. 800 deployed and non-deployed ICBM launchers, SLBM launchers, heavy bombers equipped for nuclear armaments. I mean, it sounds like we have enough crap between us to blow up the world 30 times over. Each side can conduct as many as 18 inspections of nuclear weapon sites to annually ensure each other is compliant with the treaty, though both sides agreed to pause that provision in March of 2020 due to the coronavirus. And the two sides were set to meet in November in Egypt to start talks about resuming inspections, but Russia postponed it. Of course. So, naturally, the events unfolding inside and around Ukraine in this particular case impact that. That's a statement from Russia's deputy foreign minister. Arms control and the dialogue in the sphere cannot be immune to what is happening around the bigger picture, which is quite complicated and largely disquietly playing a huge role, whatever that means, Mr. Foreign Minister. Now, the State Department revealed late last month that Russia has not been compliant with any aspect of the treaty due to its decision last August to stop allowing inspectors. Russia is not complying with its obligation under the New START Treaty to facilitate inspection activities on their own territory. That was a State Department spokesman on January the 31st. Russia's refusal to facilitate inspection activities prevents the U.S. from exercising important rights under the treaty and threatens the viability of U.S.-Russian nuclear arms control. Biden, he's agreed to an extension of the New START Treaty in 2021, although the U.S. withdrew from two other Cold War-era agreements during Donald Trump's presidency due to alleged Russian violations. So, I mean, throughout the war in Ukraine, which, is reaching its 1-year mark, Putin has threatened to use low-yield nuclear weapons if necessary, though Western officials seemingly believe the threat of such an action has actually lessened until today. Now, Zelensky, I would do the same. He's warned of World War III if China allies with Russia. He warned this yesterday. The comments came, the same day President Joe Biden made a surprise trip to Kyiv. And 2 days after U.S. intelligence officials revealed that they believe China is considering sending lethal aid to Vladimir Putin's forces. Quote, "For us, it is important that China does not support the Russian Federation in this war." That's the Ukrainian president telling the German daily, according to Reuters. In fact, I would like it to be on our side at the moment. However, I don't think that's possible. I don't think the Chinese will be joining up with Ukraine at all. But I do see an opportunity for China to make a pragmatic assessment of what's going on here, Zelensky said. Because if China allies itself with Russia, there will be a world war. And I do think that China is aware of that. President Xi is not stupid. Putin is. And I think the actions of China to this point have indicated that they've been waiting for Putin to just kind of blow himself out. Blinken, I've told you about him. He warned China on Saturday there would be horrible consequences if the Chinese communist country sent lethal support to Russia. What is scary is the suspension of the START treaty and the EU talking about that red line. The EU claims that it has warned, and I hope they have, communist China, that supplying arms to Russia would cross a big red line and have dire consequences. That's a good thing. Will the Chinese listen? Is the EU serious? Now, how much power does the EU have? I'm not sure. I'm not really sure. There's a guy by the name of Josep Borrell. He's the EU's grandiosely titled High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy. He had a recent meeting with Wang Yi, who's the director of the Office of Central Foreign Affairs Commission of the Chinese Communist Party. I asked him not to do that, expressing not only our concern, but that is a fact for us. It would be a red line in our relationship. This is Borrell. The EU itself is deeply involved in conflict, funding, arming, and training Ukrainian forces, as we all know. But to what degree? He told me that they're not going to do it. They don't plan to do it. Okay. Now, this guy, Josep Borrell, is a Spanish Socialist Party workers politician turned highly, paid bureaucrat. He said the meeting with the individuals in the Chinese Communist Party gave him confidence that there's going to be Sino-Russian relationships, but no arms being traded to Putin. Now, the foreign minister of Sweden, just to get a little technical here, who currently holds a rotating presidency of the European Council, concurred that a decision by China to supply Russia with arms would have definite ugly consequences, of course. The foreign minister, Tobias Billström, perhaps cognizant of the relative, irrelevance to world affairs in his country, Sweden being, threatened directly by Putin, not even a NATO member and unlikely to become one until it submits to Turkish demands of enforcing de facto blasphemy laws, adding that his government is standing side by side with the United States in their on message. Not going to waver. So who is the real threat? It's obviously the leader of Russia. We keep seeing jibs and jabs of G2 intelligence that say the hierarchy of the Russian generals is very, very upset with the body losses, the loss of life in this war with Ukraine. And they're very upset with their leader for not either getting this done or the inability of the Russian army to get it done. So we keep thinking that ultimately somebody's going to be taking him out, him being Putin. And there may be some kind of coup. And the world can start thinking rationally again. We can only pray that that's true. But so far, after a year, there's been no attempt. There's been nothing. Nothing. So is that G2 reliable? I leave this with you if you want to make any comments at all. 490-5858 and the toll-free number from anywhere, 800-776-5858. Again, one of the reasons I think that we're successful here at KMJ is we're not a bunch of alarmists. We don't like to portray things in conspiratorial tones. We like to use our heads, our rationale. This is just a time when the things are stacking up in a direction that could be something very ugly for us all down the road that I never thought I would see in my adult lifetime, genuinely. And to be mentally aware and prepared is one thing. Let's hope if this happens, this terrible act of war, that we're prepared in other ways too. And I don't know under the leadership of the current individual in the White House. March the 25th, big fight, Richard Comey, former champion. Jose Ramirez, former champion. Gonna be big, gonna be ugly. I can't wait. This is going to be a great fight. Now, Of course you can see it on ESPN. Of course. But you can also be there. I mean, this is big-time fun stuff when Jose fights. All right? So we'll give those tickets away before 2 today, I promise you. Phone calls about Russia suspending the nuke deal and Biden's visit to Ukraine. Edward, welcome to KMJ. What's up?
Hey, how are you?
Yeah, I'm okay.
Yeah, I can't believe Biden went to Ukraine instead of going to the train wreck. I mean, that's just on President's Day.
Yeah, I know. It doesn't make any sense. Yeah, I mean, he's better spent in Ohio than over there, but I understand this, the symbology of it all.
Yeah, right. But the thing with, I'd love to see Putin taken out. I think everybody would. But Biden doesn't have the cojones to even say anything or do anything. It seems like all he likes is the illegals coming in that cost us money and just writing checks to Ukraine and everybody else. It's unbelievable.
The reason that this is all... Okay, thank you, Edward. The reason this is all happening right now is because Biden has exposed our soft white underbelly as a country. I mean, this has really proven we have got to have strong leaders in the White House. Period. End of statement. Over and done. He is the weakest president probably in history. Frank, go right ahead. Hi.
Hey. Hi, Ray.
Hey.
Along that same line, Biden going to Ukraine, to me, it's like sticking your nose and waving your fingers in front of Putin, because we all know, including Putin, that Biden is weak. I agree with you. I agree with your callers. And this guy, to do that secretly, if he would have said publicly he was going to or thinking about going to the Ukraine, he would have got backlash. Don't do it. Don't do it. And we all watched the videos. He looked like a frail old man, and that's not a good look for the United States. Not a good look for him. And I truly believe, Ray, because, I'm 67, so I got a lot of history. I believe he's got an edge to him that he wants a war. He wants a war because, the history, the U.S. has done well during wars, economically and such. And what a mess we're in right now. Maybe he sees this as the answer. Maybe his people see this as the answer. But I thought it was a bad look on us to go walking in there, and of course, he wants to look good to the U.S., the American people, like he's got cojones, and we know he does it. And you can tell by the way he was walking, he does it. It's not like, oh, look at that man, he's got a lot of cojones. No, he was weak, frail, and it was a bad look. That's my comments.
Your comments are right on. I thought the exact same thing. How does this look to the rest of the world? The rest of the world always looks to the West. They look to the commander-in-chief of the United States of America to be that block, that piece of granite that everybody can lean on when times get tough. And unfortunately, if we lean on this guy, we're going to knock him over and probably kill him. He'll have a heart attack or something. This goes to show that Trump wasn't all that bad, right? I can guarantee you, I can flat guarantee you that if Trump were still in power, this would not be happening. There would be no war in Ukraine. And as much as many of you hate Trump, you know what I'm saying is true. And it begrudges you to have to admit it. But in the 4 years that he was in office, what problems did we have with anybody? Anybody. Maybe it's good that you have a president that's viewed as being a little kooky with his hand on the nuclear football. Maybe that keeps those with ideological differences in check. Now we worry about, the nuclear football being in the hands of Biden, him shaking so much that he accidentally, discharges it, and that's that. And we go to war for no reason. It's hard to blame one man for a situation like this. But in this particular case, the handwriting is on the wall. and the position that he has put us in, with now his own energy department indicating that the suspension of the pipeline at the beginning of the term was a mistake, not only in terms of jobs, but in terms of revenue back to the government and also independent energy supply. We don't have our own energy right now. We don't have it. How many times have I, and I'm nobody special, I'm just echoing what I hear from my colleagues in Washington. If we do not have our hand on our own water supply, our own food supply, farming, our own, borders in check, you can scratch that one off. And if we're not manufacturing our own energy, we're right for the taking. All of these issues that I've just spouted out, have to be considered issues of defense, strong defense for America. And we're not there on maybe all but one of them. It's very sad. Very sad. Jim, you're on KMJ. Hi.
Hello?
Hello there.
Yeah, great. This is Jim. The reason why I'm calling is it's kind of upsetting to me what Biden's doing. But most importantly, I can't understand the American people. We had a president that, well, let's back up. Everybody that you hear that's calling and they say that he doesn't have the cojones to do whatever. We had a president that did, but yet they elected to vote him out to get this so-called president in. It makes no sense to me why the Americans do this to their own country.
You're right. I hate to say it. I hate to say a lot of things I've said today. Thank you for the call. This is completely self-inflicted. And Biden will be the first to remind you that more people voted for him than any other president. I don't believe that. I don't believe that to be true. But I'll let him say it. I'll let him go on and say that he's created 12 million jobs when there's actually 2.7 million created. That's his own labor department. I mean, the lies that have come out of his mouth, or the fabrications, or the misspeaking, or whatever you want to call it, which the world has been privy to. I've got friends all over the world. I hear from Greece. I hear from England. I hear from Finland. I hear from Spain. Rarely from Spain, but I have friends there. I hear from Ukraine all the time. I hear from Russia. Friends that I've made in these countries. And all of them, in the very end of Trump's term and the election of Biden, they were like, oh, thank God. This is wonderful. You guys have finally come to your senses. Oh, you've done the right thing. Every one of these people, maybe with the exception of my Spanish friend, have all come back to me and said, God, in hindsight, were we wrong? We felt safe. We hated to admit it. Your guy was goofy. But we felt the world was safe. We felt safe. Now we do not feel safe. And I gotten back to them. And this is the guy that you lauded, that you wanted to be president of the United States? I mean, foreign influence has a lot on, well, I don't know how much it has on influencing an American vote. But when you're hearing everybody around the world complaining about Trump, he's weird, he's got a big mouth. But at the same time, they are benefiting by the peace that he has helped fabricate. You know what I'm saying? And now, again, and these are just individual people like me and you, nothing special. I'm not special. They're not special. We're just a bunch of ham and eggers doing our job. And they are saying to me now, God, were we wrong?